lot of people think the CFMOTO 450 got a completely new engine. But that is not really what happened. And honestly, that matters. Because for some riders, the 450MT can feel like an unproven card. It is a new model. The brand still feels new to some people. And that can create a bit of doubt. But the engine story is actually more reassuring than many people think. Because the 450MT did not start with a brand new motor built from scratch. It uses a proven 450 twin platform that CFMOTO had already used in other motorcycles and then adapted it for adventure riding. So in this video, I want to look at where this engine comes from, which bikes came before the 450MT, why CFMOTO chose a 270-degree parallel twin, what they changed for the 450MT, and why that matters when you actually ride the bike. Because the real story here is not new engine. It is proven engine, new mission. This engine did not start in the 450MT. Let's start with the biggest misunderstanding first. The 450MT engine was not born in the 450MT. This basic engine platform had already been used in other CFMOTO bikes before the MT arrived. We first saw this 450 twin in the 450 SR. Then came the 450 NK and also the 450 CL-C. Only after that we get the 450MT. So yes, the 450MT may feel like a new bike in the market, but the engine itself did not begin here. And honestly, that should give some buyers a bit more confidence, because this was not CFMOTO starting from zero and hoping for the best. It was CFMOTO taking a platform they already knew, already used, and then adapting it for a different type of motorcycle. That's a very different thing. At its core, the 450MT uses a 449cc parallel twin. It's liquid-cooled, fuel-injected, and built around a 270-degree crank. And that 270-degree layout is one of the biggest reasons this engine has the feel it actually does. Because not all parallel twins feel the same. On paper, two engines can both be parallel twins, but in real life, they feel very different. A lot of that comes down to the crank design. And in this case, the 270-degree crank gives the engine more pulse, more rhythm, and more of that V-twin-like character that many riders enjoy. So this is not just a technical detail, it's a big part of the bike's personality. On an adventure bike, this matters for more than just sound. It matters for feel, it matters for control, and it matters for how easy the bike is to manage when the surface is loose, rough, steep, or unpredictable. A 270-degree twin gives the power delivery a more natural pulse. It can make the bike feel more alive, but also easier to read when the traction is limited. And for a bike like the 450MT, that makes a lot of sense. Because this is not only a road bike with a long suspension. It is meant to work on gravel, dirt, and slower technical riding too. So yes, the 270-degree setup gives the bike a more interesting sound, but more importantly, it gives the engine a character that suits the job. This is also where the story gets interesting. The 450 SR was the sportier starting point for this engine family. The 450 NK used the same platform in a naked bike format. The 450 CL-C then showed how the same basic engine family could be tuned for a different style again, with a more relaxed, torque-focused feel. And then the 450MT arrived as an adventure version. That tells you something important. CFMOTO did not build 4 separate engines for 4 separate bikes. They built a 450 twin platform and then shaped it to fit different roles. Sport, naked, cruiser, adventure. Same engine family, different personality. And that is exactly why the 450MT is more interesting than people think. Now, this doesn't mean the 450MT is just using a sport bike engine unchanged. That is not the point. CFMOTO says the engine was changed for the 450MT, not replaced, changed. They mention updates to the cams, the ignition timing, and the intake and exhaust setup. And the goal seems clear. Less focus on peak power, more focus on usable low and mid-range performance. And that is exactly what you want on a lightweight adventure bike. Because this bike should not only feel good when you rev it hard on the road, it should also feel smooth, useful, and easy to control when you are standing on the pegs, riding slower and trying to find grip. So this is not just the same engine dropped into a different frame. It is the same base platform, tuned for a different job. And I think this point is important, because some riders still look at the 450MT and think, new model, newer brand, maybe too risky. And that reaction is understandable. But when you look at the engine story, it comes a bit easier to trust what CFMOTO did here. Because the 450MT engine is not some random first attempt. It comes from a platform that had already been used in 3 other bikes before the 450MT arrived. So the smarter way to look at the 450MT is probably this. The motorcycle may be new, but the engine behind it is not starting from scratch. And for a lot of buyers, that should matter. So, what are the real benefits? First, the engine platform was already proven in other bikes. Second, the 270-degree crank gives the engine more character and a more engaging feel. Third, the 450MT tune seems focused on real-world riding, not just spec sheet numbers. That means stronger low and mid-range behavior, better control, and a character that suits adventure riding much better than a peakier, road-focused tune would. And honestly, that is probably what most riders will notice the most. Not what happens at the very top of the rev range, but how the engine feels in the places where this bike will actually be used. Of course, every engine design is a compromise. A 270-degree twin gives you character and feel, but it also needs proper balancing and the right tuning to stay smooth. And when you tune an engine more for low and mid-range use, you usually give up a little of that top end, high RPM road bike feeling. That is normal. you always trade one strength for another. But for a lightweight ADV bike, this feels like the right trade. So in the end, the CFMOTO 450MT engine is interesting for a different reason than many people think. Not because it's completely new, but because it's not. CFMOTO took a proven 450 twin platform, one that had already been used in 3 other bikes, and then adapted it for adventure riding. That is the real story. Not a brand new motor from scratch, a known engine platform tuned for a new purpose. In my opinion, that is one of the smartest things about the 450MT. Because adventure bikes do not need engines that only look good on paper. They need engines that feel right when you actually ride them. If you ride the 450MT, or you are thinking about buying one, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, ride safe, and see you in the next one.